You wake up tomorrow and discover that everything you own, your home, your car, your bank account, even the clothes you're wearing, no longer belongs to you. Every contract you signed is void. You can't sue anyone. You can't be sued. Legally, you don't exist. You are property. This wasn't a nightmare. This was the reality for every married woman in Tudor England, and the king who beheaded 2 of his wives. He was just the most visible enforcer of a system that had already erased the legal existence of half the population. This is the story of coverture, the law that turned marriage into ownership and women into possessions. What you're about to discover will make you see Henry VIII's reign in a completely different light. Because while history remembers the 6 wives who died or were divorced, it forgot the hundreds of thousands of ordinary women who suffered something arguably worse: legal death while still breathing. If you're drawn to legal records buried in court archives and documentation that reveals how power actually worked, not the sanitized version they taught in school, we dig through Tudor court records and legal manuscripts scholars have overlooked for centuries. Now back to the story, because what we're about to uncover makes every injustice you've heard of look temporary. Consider yourself in 1535, standing in a small parish church in Yorkshire. You're 19 years old, the daughter of a prosperous wool merchant. Your father spent years teaching you the trade. You know how to negotiate with shepherds, judge the quality of fleece, keep account books. You've been running parts of his business since you were 15. Today is your wedding day. You're marrying the son of another merchant family. You're wearing your finest gown, purchased with money you earned yourself. In a leather purse hidden beneath your skirts, you carry the coins you've saved over the years. After the ceremony, there will be a feast, paid for partly by your dowry of £200, a fortune in an era when a skilled craftsman might earn £5 a year. The priest begins the ceremony. You repeat your vows. Your new husband slips a ring onto your finger, and in that instant, you cease to exist. Not physically, of course. Your heart still beats, your lungs still draw breath. But legally, you have just died. The woman who walked into this church, the merchant's daughter with her own earnings, her own property, her own legal identity, has vanished. In her place stands a femme covert, a covered woman, and the law is very clear about what that means. The doctrine of coverture stretched back centuries, inherited from Norman French law after the conquest of 1066. The legal theory was almost poetic in its cruelty. A husband and wife were one person under the law, and that one person was the husband. Let's be absolutely clear about what this meant in practice. That £200 dowry you brought to the marriage, it's his now. Not ours, his. The coins in your purse, his. The gown you're wearing, legally, he owns it. Any wages you earn in the future, from weaving, from selling goods at market, from any labor, those wages are his property from the moment you receive them. But the erasure goes deeper than property. You cannot enter into a legal contract. If you try to make an agreement to sell goods or services, it's void. You cannot sue someone who wrongs you. Your husband must do it on your behalf. You cannot be sued for debts you incur, because legally, you're not capable of incurring debt. If someone slanders you, damages your property, or even assaults you, you cannot take them to court. Your husband is your only legal voice. When you go to the market to sell wool after your wedding, the buyers are confused. They've done business with your family for years, but now they're told they must deal with your husband. When you try to collect payment for goods you sold before the marriage, money owed to you, you discover you have no legal right to collect it. Those debts are now your husband's property. Your father had set aside a small workshop with looms and spinning wheels as part of your marriage portion. You'd planned to run it yourself, employing other women, building a business. But under cover, you cannot legally employ workers, sign contracts with suppliers, or even rent the building without your husband's involvement. If your husband is supportive, he might allow you to continue the work, acting as your legal proxy. But if he's indifferent, or actively hostile, or simply incompetent at business, there's nothing you can do. The workshop that was meant to give you independence has become just another piece of his property portfolio. And if he's cruel, if he drinks away your earnings, if he gambles with your inheritance, if he beats you and you try to leave, the law offers you almost no recourse. Divorce in the modern sense doesn't exist. Legal separation was possible, but rare, expensive, and didn't restore your legal identity or your property. For the vast majority of women, farmers' wives, craftsmen's daughters, servants, laborers, there were no protections. They experienced coverture in its rurest, most absolute form. They had to hope their husbands would be kind, competent stewards of the family property. Hope was not a strategy, but for most women, it was the only option available. In Tudor England, if you were born female and into a family with any property at all, your economic value, who was calculated from birth, not your potential, not your talents, not your intelligence, your value as a commodity in the marriage market. Fathers kept ledgers. They recorded their daughters' portions alongside livestock and land values. A first daughter might receive 100 marks, a second daughter perhaps 80. The calculations were precise, cold, and utterly transactional. England's inheritance laws favored primogeniture. The eldest son inherited the family estate intact. Daughters received dowries, a one-time payment of money or property that would be their only inheritance. But remember, the moment they married, coverture ensured they couldn't control it. Envision a meeting in a prosperous London townhouse. Two fathers sit across a table, wine between them, documents spread out. They're negotiating their children's future. "My daughter brings £200 in coin, plus household linens valued at £20, says the first man, a successful cloth merchant. "She's been trained in household management. She reads and writes, and she's of excellent character. She's 16, sir." The second man nods. He's a minor gentleman with a small estate in Kent. The boy will provide her with a jointure, use of 1/3 of the estate should he predest her. When a woman married in Tudor England, her dowry, property, and even her legal identity became her husband's. Her worth was quantified in monetary terms: £200 for one daughter, £100 for another. Marriage was not a union of love, but a business merger, where the woman was a piece of property being transferred. This system devastated women psychologically, making their futures dependent on the whims of the marriage market. When a merchant family's financial situation faltered, daughters with high dowries became unmarketable, facing a future of poverty and dependency. Even royal women weren't spared. Catherine of Aragon, married to Henry VIII's older brother, brought a massive dowry of £40,000. But when her husband died, she was left in poverty, her dowry inaccessible. Henry VIII refused to return the dowry, and Catherine lived a life of uncertainty, caught between two kingdoms. This system extended far beyond royal families. Thousands of women lived trapped by dowry negotiations and inheritance laws that turned them into property. Even when Henry VIII broke with Rome and declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England, Catherine's downfall was part of a much larger message. Women's worth was defined by their husband's approval, and that approval could disappear at any moment. The pressure on women to produce male heirs was immense, as a woman with only daughters was seen as a failure by society and law. The dissolution of monasteries by Henry between 1536 and 1541 further devastated women's autonomy. Monasteries had provided some women, like nuns, the opportunity to live without male guardianship. After the dissolution, many nuns found themselves destitute, having no place in a society that offered no alternative. The pension they received was often insufficient for survival, leading many to beg for aid. In this environment, speaking out could be dangerous. Women who expressed support for the old queen or criticized the king could face accusations of treason. Women were accused, imprisoned, and executed for their beliefs. Margaret Pole, the Countess of Salisbury, was executed partly for her support of Catherine of Aragon, while Anne Askew was burned at the stake for her Protestant beliefs. For women, the path to autonomy was slim, but it existed in one dark way: the death of their husband. When a husband died, his widow regained legal autonomy. She could own property, run businesses, and make contracts in her own name. But this newfound independence came at a high cost. Widows were often pressured to remarry, and if they did, all the property they controlled would revert to their new husband. Joan Dance, a widow in the 1530s, became one of the largest beer suppliers in her neighborhood after inheriting her husband's brewery. But many widows faced immense pressures and dangers. Their wealth or property made them targets, and remarrying meant losing everything again under coverture. For women like Elena, widowed at 35, the choice was between security and autonomy. Despite her success in running her late husband's goldsmith business, societal pressures pushed her toward remarrying, thus losing the independence she had fought for. For most widows, the situation was far worse. Elderly widows, or those without property, often faced desperate circumstances, dependent on the charity of others. Parish records show that many were forced to rely on the church's poor relief just to survive. This systemic legal erasure of women, where their personhood was legally treated as negotiable, persisted for centuries. It wasn't just about legal technicalities. It was about the deep-seated belief that women were perpetual dependents. This ideology shaped every aspect of society. Women were excluded from universities, professions, and politics. If a woman couldn't own property or sign a contract, how could she be a lawyer or merchant? Despite the reform in the late 19th century, the damage done by centuries of coverture and legal erasure of women's rights is staggering. Even today, the long-term effects of this legal system are still felt. Women lived and died under coverture, with their voices silenced and their experiences disregarded. Henry VIII's reign is remembered for his 6 wives, but the real impact of his time on women wasn't in the beheadings of queens, but in the lives of thousands of ordinary women who lost their legal identities. The merchant's daughter who watched her business crumble, the widow who traded her independence for companionship, and the wife who was discarded for failing to produce a male heir. These women's stories are buried in history. While coverture has been abolished, the legacy of these laws still lingers. The women who survived it, often without violence, but through the law's erasure, deserve more than our pity. They deserve our remembrance. The legal horrors they endured were quiet but profound. This hidden history of legal erasure should be recognized, as these women's voices must not be silenced again.